Oklahoma Senator James Lankford tells One America's John Hines that Joe Biden is not the president-elect and that his earlier comments were misreported. Take a look.
It appears some of your remarks may have been taken out of context or inaccurately reported by CNN and others with regard to your thoughts about Mr. Biden receiving this presidential briefing. What seems to be going on, sir?
So I know it's shocking that other networks take conservatives out of context. I know no one's ever seen that before. But I made a simple statement yesterday that during the campaign, both sides received briefings, intel briefings, because starting after the national conventions, both sides always receive briefings because you don't know who's going to be the president yet. That should continue on because the election is still going on. Nothing is resolved in the election at this point. And so my simple statement is we don't know who the president's going to be at this point. So both sides should be receiving the intel briefings and to continue on with that process on it. Right now, Joe Biden has stopped on that. I just think the election's not resolved one way or the other, so let's keep that going. But Joe Biden is certainly not a president-elect as he's been declared by a lot of the different networks on it. He's a candidate, and we're still counting votes.
So my understanding is there was something about a Friday deadline. Is that still the case, and what's that about?
So a lot of people misunderstood this because they weren't doing their research and their background on it. GSA starts declaring how they're going to handle transitions on this. This is something that this government entity determines. Their first day they could do that is this Friday. I would be shocked if GSA opened up all the doors to Joe Biden and said, yes, we're going to recognize you as the next president, because states are still counting. We're still doing recounts. There's lots of things to still be known. So I'm going to engage with GSA on Friday and to say, okay, you're not going to determine today. What's your process? The committee I'm on has oversight of GSA. And so I engage with them like I do every other committee and say, how are you going to make decisions? What's your process going to be? I do think there's a national security issue that if you do an intelligence briefing for people, you get them ready to be able to make the hard decisions. And if we're not preparing both of them at this point, I think we are making a national security mistake to be able to do that. But I think the president should continue to be able to press his case because I think he's got lots of outstanding votes that have not been counted yet.
So is it fair to say then that cable television networks do not basically determine the winner of the presidential election, sir?
No, there is no declared winner of the presidential election, and though news networks have decided who they want to be the next president, the American people have not had their votes counted yet, have not had their votes certified yet, and we're a long way from actually getting a final answer from what we're going to have on this presidential election. So it took 37 days in 2000 to be able to go through all the recounts, all the evaluations, everything that actually occurred to be able to get that resolved. It will probably take at least a month again this time to be able to go through the process. It's entirely reasonable to be able to do, but I'd much rather get it right than for the network to try to cut it off and to say nothing to see here, move along. That's not who we are as Americans. We need to be able to see everything and have full transparency and to ask the hard questions.
So there are some recounts going on, including in Georgia. Is that a reasonable course of action at this point, sir?
It is actually. There were some questions about how the software was managing different ballots at this point, whether it was being consistent on there. The best way to resolve that is to do a hand recount, and they're going to do a hand recount in Georgia on every single ballot. All 5 million ballots are going to go through a hand recount. That is the best way to be able to do it. It'll take a full week to be able to do that large of a count, but it can be done. They'll have observers that get a chance to be able to see it, and then we'll start verifying Georgia to be able to say, okay, what was really happening? Because then we'll know, was there a software glitch that was there that was forcing a recount on it? There's also opportunities to be able to look at how they handled the absentee ballots, if they were double counting some of these ballots that were coming in. And this also buys us a little more time to be able to look at and see, were these absentee voters real? We know for some other states that we had people that were voting that were dead, long since dead. And so this gives us an opportunity to be able to get more time to be able to see, okay, which votes were coming in that is actually a legitimate registered voter that is alive, and which votes are just showing up here. So we've seen this before. In Indiana 10 years ago or so, there was a big operation that was happening that was actually taking absentee votes, registering people for absentee ballots, getting them mailed to their spot. They were filling them out and mailing them back in for them. It's a huge operation that we had, I think, about 10 people that pled guilty to that operation when it was said and done. So absentee votes, mail-in votes can be manipulated. We've seen that before. This is the right time to be able to answer the questions right now.
Senator James Lankford, thank you for talking to us on One American News, sir.
Thank you.